সুপ্রিয় দর্শক সবাইকে স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি ফার্মিং ফিউচার বাংলাদেশ নিবেদিত দীপ্ত কৃষি সংলাপে পাওয়ার্ড বাই কাজী ফার্মস। দীপ্ত কৃষি সংলাপের মাধ্যমে আমরা কৃষির নানাবিধ সমস্যা সমাধানের উপায় নিয়ে আলোচনা করছি প্রতি সপ্তাহে। আমাদের এই সপ্তাহের আলোচনার বিষয় এগ্রিকালচারাল বায়োটেকনোলজি অ্যান্ড বায়োসেফটি ইন বাংলাদেশ, প্রসপেক্টস অ্যান্ড চ্যালেঞ্জেস। আমাদের সাথে এই বিশেষ আয়োজনে এই সপ্তাহের আয়োজনে যুক্ত হয়েছেন ডক্টর গ্রেগরি জেফ, Associate Director for Policy and Regulatory Affairs at the Alliance for Science. দর্শক, কৃষির অভূতপূর্ণ পরিবর্তন যেটা হচ্ছে তার সাথে প্রযুক্তির সমন্বয় ঘটিয়ে খাদ্য পুষ্টি নিরাপত্তা অর্জনের লক্ষ্যে বিভিন্ন দেশ কাজ করে যাচ্ছে। বাংলাদেশও সেখানে সামিল হয়েছে। আধুনিক কৃষি প্রযুক্তির একটি বড় কম্পোনেন্ট বা ধারা যদি আমরা বলি তাহলে হচ্ছে জীব প্রযুক্তি। জীব প্রযুক্তি একটি জটিল এবং উন্নত প্রযুক্তি, যা নিয়ে কাজ করার জন্য স্থানীয় এবং আন্তর্জাতিক বিভিন্ন নিয়মনীতি রয়েছে। আমরা আজকে কৃষিতে জীব প্রযুক্তির ব্যবহার এবং প্রয়োগের বিভিন্ন নীতি নিয়ে আলোচনা করব। এই বিষয়ে আলোচনার জন্য আমাদের সাথে আজকে আন্তর্জাতিক একজন বিশেষজ্ঞ যুক্ত হয়েছেন। আলোচনার সুবিধার্থে আমরা পুরো আলোচনাটি ইংরেজিতে করব। গ্রেগ, welcome you to the weekly TV talk show Farming Future Bangladesh presented Deepto Krishi Sanglap. We would like to know of you and also like to know that what do you think about biosafety, how easily it can be defined, and what are the implications of biosafety law and regulations in regard to advancement of technology to ensure food and nutrition security?
Well, thank you for having me here, Arif, and I'm looking forward to our discussion today. I guess let's start with the term biosafety, and really that refers to how do we ensure the safety of genetically modified organisms. And I hope that your audience is familiar with that, but those are crops and animals that have been developed in a way to include new traits in them, traits that have some advantage to farmers or advantage to consumers. And so biosafety refers to analyzing those crops and animals to make sure that they're safe for the environment, for humans, and for animals. And that's a science-based assessment of looking at potential risks and then how to manage those risks. So it's not about is something risky or not risky, but it's about how do we ensure that we minimize any potential risks and get the benefits of that technology, of the product at the same time. So it's about managing risks to ensure benefits.
So why we use the term risk? Is it risky to develop any crop or adding any trait to any animal or plant or any
So everything we do in life has risks. We took a car here today to the studio. That has risks. You can be in an accident in that car, but we have certain safeguards. How do we manage our car risks? We have rules about how you drive. You have to have a driver's license to drive. You have safety features in your car.
It's more of like managing the thing and how you develop it.
Right. So everything we have, everything humans have, all we interact has benefits to it and has risks to it. And how do we balance those and how do we manage those? And so the same thing for crops and animals. Some crops are native to certain species, to certain areas of the world, but we bring in other crops that aren't native to the area of the world. For example, here you might grow cotton in Bangladesh. Cotton may not be natural to the ecosystem in Bangladesh, and bringing that in may bring some risks or some issues associated with it, but it also may bring benefit. It may be if the clothing we're wearing is made of cotton. So everything has risks.
So why do you think the implication or importance of biosafety regulation?
Well, these are new technologies, and the other thing we have to remember is things that are new are novel, but they're also unusual to us. And so human nature, generally, we tend to be a little risk averse. And so things that are new, some of us go off and adopt them, but many of us hold back. And that's especially true when we talk about things like food, because food is culture, food is tradition. And so we may be less likely to try something new. And so anything that new, we have to make sure that we have to be a little more careful about what those potential risks might be, as well as what those benefits might be. There may be a lot of benefit for something new, but there may be some risk associated with it. So these kinds of crops that are genetically engineered are novel and new, and so we need to take a look at them.
So can you cite few examples that the biosafety regulations act in a way that sometimes it played the complementary role, or sometimes it helped the technology to advance in a way that the community or farmer or the consumers get benefited from it?
Well, I think what the regulation does is it's a check. It's an independent check, a transparent check to make sure we're using the best science to develop the best products out there that we can have. And so, on the one hand, it ensures that we have no bad outcomes by checking, and at the same time, it also gives us all confidence as consumers, as consumers of these products, as individuals in the country. We can feel comfortable about eating those or about growing those as a farmer because we know somebody's checked to make sure that they're still going to get the same yield that they got with their old crops. Maybe they're going to get better yield. Maybe there's going to have some
Added value
benefit
to
them.
it. Yeah.
Right. So we want that because each of us, a farmer doesn't want to take a crop that hasn't been checked by anybody. That's their livelihood. They don't want to wake up and the crop's all dead the next one morning and they have no food for their family. So they want somebody to check that out. And so the biosafety rules are one of many rules that the government uses to ensure that the products that are out there for all of us to consume and utilize are not going to have, problems associated with them.
So in relation to that, different government and parties are involved in it. But what is the ideal status and the practice to implement a biosafety regulation and policy?
Well, anytime you have any in this case, the biosafety regulation and policy, but I think the most important thing is transparency. So you need to know the who, what, where, when, and how around the regulatory system. So who's going to do it? What ministry? What are they going to ask for? What information are they going to ask for? Which products are going to be covered by that? And then how the assessment's going to be done and how a decision's going to be made and how that decision's going to be communicated to the relevant stakeholders. So what the regulatory system does is explain all of that. It tells the developer, here are the steps you need to bring a product to market. Here's who you have to interact with, and it tells everybody else who has
to comply with both local requirement and regional or international requirements.
So in some cases there are international requirements. So here, there are international treaties around the movement of genetically modified organisms to make sure that they don't have adverse impacts on the environment. And the Bangladesh is a member of those treaties. And so those have certain obligations, certain legal requirements. And so the laws in Bangladesh implement those international treaties, which are harmonization. They allow everybody in all the different countries in the world to trade among each other, to ensure that they're not harming their environment, and to get the benefits of new technologies.
So I have a simple question that for a researcher or someone who is doing the science in the laboratory, on the field, on the ground, is it required for them to have the extensive knowledge about biosafety policy and regulation? How you evaluate that?
Well, if you're a scientist developing products, you first want to have your scientific knowledge about your area of field and things like that. But even in a laboratory, there are government requirements. And so all of us have government requirements that are imposed upon us every day. And we need to know what those are. So if you are working on a genetically modified crop in Bangladesh, you should have some knowledge about what are the laws and requirements that might affect the product that you're developing, the research that you're doing, even at the research stage.
So you have traveled many parts of the world, you have seen many, and you have been in this process for a long time. How you see and evaluate our position in relation to biosafety regulation in Bangladesh, particularly where we are now, what are the areas we need to improve, where we can invest?
So, Bangladesh has a biosafety policy for a long time, for many, many years. And in fact, they were one of the first Asian countries to establish a biosafety policy and regulations to go along with that. And so that made them a leader in the area. And that's one of the reasons they have farmers who grow BT eggplant in this country, is because they put that policy in place. They put those regulations in place. So, they started out being one of the leaders in the area, in this field. I think that, they still have a ways to go. They have lots of good rules and regulations on paper, but sometimes they're not implemented in as efficient and transparent a way as we might like. What I see in many, many countries, and what the ideal would be, is a science-based regulatory system that is both transparent and efficient. So if somebody comes with them with a product, that they can look at it and make a science-based decision about whether it's safe and get that to the developer in a short period of time so that that product can get to market and the country can utilize those benefits. And I think, you know, what I've seen and heard about in Bangladesh is they have some of that, but it's not as efficient as it might be. They may need some additional capacity in their regulatory agencies to really be able to do that in a timely manner. So, you know,
And
I think they're similar.
it's relatively new, you know, for a country like Bangladesh, though it's been in the industry for more than 25 years. But from our understanding, we got the first genetically engineered crop in 2013. So, I mean, I think there is a way to learn more and build our capacity on that. What do you think?
Right. No, I mean, the science, it takes a while to do these crops. There aren't that many of them throughout the world. And so you're right. In order to build the capacity in the regulatory system, in the government, you also have to have applications, and applications have to move forward. So I think it's, you know, both of them have to happen hand in hand.
So, I mean, what is the relationship of individual, you know, like capacity and then institutional capacity in this periphery or in this portfolio of learning biosafety policy and regulation and implementing them in the field of research?
So, I mean, you have to have both institutional capacity and individual capacity. You have to have institutions who have knowledge about these areas, know what to do, and have staff that can do that. But you also have to have individuals, individuals who both have scientific expertise. In order to do good biosafety oversight, you may need somebody who, you know, understands plant biology, for example, if we're looking at crops. If we're looking at a crop like eggplant or a crop like corn or a crop like cotton, you need to have people who understand the biology of those crops and also understand the agricultural systems that they're growing in. So you need both individuals and you need the institutions. Both of them have to have that capacity, and that takes a while to develop. And this field is still growing. I mean, what was a biosafety risk assessment 20 years ago is less sophisticated than what we are today, because even though Bangladesh hasn't had a lot of these crops, there have been a lot of these crops in the country where I come from, the United States, or other places around the world. And so as we've had more crops come to market, countries have gotten better at analyzing what are the potential risks and what are the potential benefits and how to balance those. And other countries who haven't had as many have to catch up and build that same capacity.
Yeah, in that dynamic, there are new avenues. For example, gene editing, and probably in near-term future, we'll see more advanced technology. So, what are the realms of advancement and learning opportunity, and how actually policy regulations are defining this new avenue, new direction of the technology and improvement?
Well, you're so right, Arif. I mean, 5 years ago, we didn't know about, we barely knew about CRISPR, and now people are producing products using CRISPR, gene editing crops. And 5 years from now, there'll probably be 4 or 5 new different ways of editing the genomes of crops and animals to improve those varieties that you and I don't even know about. And so we want to utilize those technologies, and with those technologies, they may be even safer than the older technologies. In many cases, that's the fact. So what I think is always most important in a policy and in the government is flexibility. You want flexibility to be able to change with the times. As things change, you want to be able to change also. If something is less risky, you may need to do less oversight of it. And if there's something that's really, really beneficial, you may want to streamline that. And so I think you bring up a good point. And so we have this balancing where we want regulatory systems to be thorough, we want them to be transparent, we want them to be efficient, but we also need them to be flexible so that as new things come about, they can adapt and do that. And I think, you know, Bangladesh hasn't had any adaptation of their regulatory system yet for gene editing, but some of your neighbors have started doing that. The Philippines, for example, recently came out with some guidelines and some modifications to their regulatory system that now treats gene editing slightly differently, or some applications of it differently than we might call a classic GMO. So it's a learning process and a process willingness to change things as the technology evolves.
So why do you think that this technology is actually leading and directing us towards, like tackling challenges of food and nutrition security, climate change, or increased population who requires more food? mitigating, like the impact of agriculture in environmental risk factors?
So, feeding humans takes a lot of effort, and we all have to thank the farmers who are out there doing that. But farming is not easy. And as you know, it's always subject to weather. It's subject to so many different conditions, soil conditions, water conditions. And so, scientists have been working for as long as humans have been on this earth. People have been developing crops to try to improve yield and provide nutrition to consumers who are eating those, humans who are eating those. But there's always new challenges, new pests, droughts, salinity, all kinds of things. And so we need all kinds of tools to try to address those. And biotechnology, genetic engineering, gene editing, GMOs, is one technology that can help solve those problems. So there are applications of this technology that will increase yields of farmers.
I mean, would you mind share a few examples? Like we know about BT eggplant in Bangladesh, but is there any other crop in any other country that has been, like deregulated? Farmers are getting benefit from that?
Yes, I mean, one of your neighbors, the Philippines, has been growing maize for a long time. Their farmers have been growing maize and getting benefits from that. I believe that same crop is also grown in Vietnam these days. So there are not, and there's a genetically engineered cotton that's being grown in India by many, many millions of farmers there getting benefits from that. And then in my country, we have, I think, 10 or 11 different crops that are genetically engineered. Some of them are large commodity crops like corn and soybeans and cotton, but we also have consumer-friendly crops. So green and yellow squashes that are genetically engineered, pineapples that are pink, that have been genetically engineered that are pink instead of looking yellow. Papaya, apples. And so there are a number of, I can't tell you how many countries, but there are several dozen countries around the world that have farmers who are growing genetically engineered crops. And they do that because they have some benefit, some additional trait in them that wouldn't otherwise be in them, whether that increases yield, whether that reduces the amount of pesticides they use, whether that allows them to have climate-friendly practices such as no-till to protect the soil and protect groundwater from getting contaminated. They're all different kinds of traits that are involved with them.
So like the technology is advancing, agriculture itself is changing. And where do you envision these regulations? Are they friendly and helping to proceed with the technological advancement, or they are constraining the technological advancement?
I think different people would say have different answers to that. I think that they do both at the same time. I do think you need some sort of oversight here. You do need to check on some of these products before they go to market. I think without that, you would have potential market issues, trade issues, consumer issues. So you need that, and you also want to ensure that they aren't going to harm the environment or harm humans or animals. So I think you need some oversight. At the same time, sometimes that oversight can, in some countries, be constraining. It can take too long. It's not done in a way that's science-based, and so it can hurt, delay the development or the commercialization of some of these crops.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg, for coming and meeting us and having this very important discussion. দর্শক, আমরা আজকে আলোচনা করছিলাম কৃষি জীব প্রযুক্তির আইন সংক্রান্ত নানা বিষয় নিয়ে। বাংলাদেশ সহ পৃথিবীর নানা দেশ আসলে কৃষি জীব প্রযুক্তি নিয়ে, জিন প্রকৌশল, জিন এডিটিং এই প্রযুক্তিগুলো নিয়ে কাজ করছে, এবং সেই প্রযুক্তিগুলো নিয়ে কাজ করার জন্য স্থানীয় আন্তর্জাতিক বিভিন্ন নিয়মনীতি মেনে আসলে কাজ করতে হয়। আমরা আজকে কৃষি জীব প্রযুক্তির নিয়ম প্রসঙ্গে এবং সেগুলো মেনে চলার যে গুরুত্ব আছে সেগুলো নিয়ে আলোচনা করলাম। আমাদের এই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ আলোচনায় যুক্ত হয়েছিলেন গ্রেগ জেফি। উনি অ্যাসোসিয়েট ডিরেক্টর হিসেবে কাজ করছেন পলিসি অ্যান্ড রেগুলেটরি অ্যাফেয়ার্স অ্যাট অ্যালায়েন্স ফর সায়েন্স। পুরো আলোচনায় আমি আরিফ ছিলাম আপনাদের সাথে। আমাদের এই নিয়মিত আলোচনা প্রচারিত হচ্ছে প্রতি শুক্রবার বিকেল 5:30 ফার্মিং ফিচার বাংলাদেশ নিবেদিত দীপ্ত কৃষি সংলাপের পরবর্তী পর্ব দেখার আমন্ত্রণ জানিয়ে বিদায় নিচ্ছি। সবাই ভালো থাকবেন, নিরাপদে থাকবেন।